We on? We're live. What's going on, people? It's Josh here from Jed's Fitness, and today I'm going to be speaking to you about the importance of training frequency and how using certain training splits can have a huge impact on muscle growth. First of all, I just want to say I'm sorry about the lighting. I know it's not the best, but it's quite hard to light a whiteboard without getting all reflections on the back. So I wanted to release this video because I feel that there's quite a big misconception and people get the wrong idea, especially if you're new to the fitness industry, about the type of training and the type of splits that you should be doing. So quite often you see promoted in things like Flex magazine, or the muscle mags and some forums. I'm sure if you typed it on Google, bodybuilding split, and up would pop your standard bro split. The bro split is a training program where you'll train each muscle group one time a week. Example of this would be your international chest Monday, your back Tuesday, legs Wednesday, shoulders Thursday, and then the arms have got their own designated day, say Friday. So from the outside it looks like a good program, but I'm about to tell you why the bro split really isn't a good idea, especially if you're a natural athlete. So when we're training, when we go to the gym and lift weights, when we're putting our muscles under load or tension, we create microscopic tears in the muscle fibres, and a process is stimulated called protein synthesis. Now essentially what protein synthesis is just muscle growth. So it's a process in which your muscles are being repaired and grow. The muscle growth or protein synthesis only lasts for a maximum of 72 hours, so 3 days. And that's at the most extreme points when you've had a really intense session. So if you put that into perspective, what's going to happen is we're going to train, protein synthesis is going to take place for between 2 and 3 days, and then it's going to drop back off. So after those 2 or 3 days, your muscles will no longer be growing. That means that on a bro split, training every muscle group one time a week, you're then going to go another 4 or 5 days without training that muscle where it could have been trained. So as a natural athlete, I would recommend increasing the frequency so that you're constantly stimulating the protein synthesis over the week. Now I'll get later on in the video about how to set it up, but for now I'll just go over the reasoning. So yeah, so rather than just training once, stimulating protein synthesis where it drops off and then leaving it again, so the next week we're going to be constantly stimulating protein synthesis every 2 to 3 days, maximising muscle growth. As well as affecting our muscles, our bones, skeletal system and joints, training actually has a huge impact on our central nervous system. Now our central nervous system from a crazy intense workout can actually take up to a week to recover. So it's important when we're increasing the frequency to make sure that we're not training at 100% every single session. So we don't want to be going to failure on every set, especially not with the big compound lifts, and you want to be sort of structuring your program so that you've got a more intense session, let's say a heavier session, maybe a strength-based session, focusing on 5x5s. Midway through the week you'll then drop the intensity a bit, so you'll have a moderate type session where you increase the rep slightly and drop the weight, and then at the end of the week you will have a lighter session where you increase the rep range and drop the weight right off, and that'll be your sort of recovery based session. It still means that you're going to be stimulating protein synthesis throughout each session. It just means that you won't be going flat out every single session. How frequently a muscle can be trained is actually going to depend on its size. So the bigger muscles, the bigger muscle groups like your quads, your hamstrings, your back and your chest, that contain a lot more muscle fibres, can actually take the full 3 days to recover, so therefore they're going to be trained slightly less frequently. I recommend training any of these muscle groups sort of 2 to 3 times a week. However, when we're speaking about the smaller muscle groups, so your deltoids, your biceps, your triceps and your calves for example, they have a much smaller growth curve, which means that they can be trained a lot more frequently. So for these you could train them 3, 4, possibly even 5 times a week with adequate recovery. Moving on to point 5, another point that's really important to remember when we're speaking about increasing our frequency in the program is our volume. So by volume, let's say we've got your typical bro split where on Monday we'll do 15 sets on chest and then we'll wait another week before we train it again. So if we're increasing the frequency, we want to keep the same amount of volume throughout the week. You've got to remember the volume adds up throughout the week. So by this I mean you can't be going to do a chest session every Monday, Wednesday and Friday that's going to have 15 sets of chest on Monday, 15 sets of chest on Wednesday and 15 sets of chest on Friday. So you're going to end up overreaching and burning out. So what you have to do, or what I would recommend doing as a starting point, is you take the same amount of volume, so the same amount of sets, you take your 15 sets and you spread it out over the week. So you'll be doing 5 sets 3 times a week as opposed to 15 sets 1 time a week. This is just going to make sure that you're constantly stimulating your protein synthesis throughout the week. And also another benefit of this is that you know when you go to finish off a training session and you're fatigued and you can't lift as much as you hoped you would have been able to, or you're not half as strong as you were at the start of the session. Now the benefit of splitting your volume up into 3 different sessions means that actually you can take each set with a higher work ethic, so the intensity will be greater, you'll be able to lift more and therefore stimulate more muscle growth. Point number 6 is DOMS. Now I'm sure you've all, well I don't know if you've all heard about it, but I'm sure you've all felt it before. DOMS stands for delayed onset of muscle soreness. Now this is that achy feeling you get sort of 2 to 3 days after you've had a big session or an intense session. Also a lot of beginners tend to get this. So DOMS actually has no correlation to muscle growth. So although you might be thinking, I've done a full-blown leg session on Monday and my legs are going to be hurting for a week so I can't train them again, this doesn't mean that they're still growing throughout that period. When you're moving on to a high frequency program, you might end up training for the first couple of weeks where you've still got DOMS, but after a while, as your body adapts, this will go. So I've explained some of the benefits of why you should be using a high frequency program, but what program should you pick? Now this is going to depend on how many times you can train a week, what certain days you can train, and for how long for. So when we're speaking about higher frequency programs, there's a few routines that we can use. First of all, we've got our legs push-pull program. Now our legs push-pull is essentially a 3-day split. So we've got our leg day, which is lower body, speaks for itself. Our push day, which is all the pushing muscles. So we've got our chest, triceps and our shoulders. And then a pull day, which is all the pulling muscles. So our biceps, our back and our traps, and also rear delts. So that'll look something like this. It'll be a legs, followed by a push session, followed by a pull session. Some people then have a rest and then repeat again, which means you're training every muscle group twice a week. You could also run it straight through, so legs push pull, and then have a rest. The next program, which is actually the program that I'm currently running, and that is an upper lower split. So it speaks for itself again. It's upper body one day and lower body the next day. So my program at the moment is upper lower, rest and then repeat. So I'm actually training each muscle group 3 times a week. We've then got our full body program. This is the program that I recommend to most beginners. You can do this program twice a week, 3 times a week, or every other day. So you can hit it 4 times in 8 days. Obviously it speaks for itself. It's full body training every other day, but the thing to remember with that is that you really have got to keep the volume low because your frequency is so high. The last of all is a push-pull. This isn't a very common routine, but still it can be done and can be done at a higher frequency. This is the same as legs push-pull, but we've got our hamstrings on a pull day and our quads on a push day. So to finish off, you might be thinking that how come I've told you all this, but this bro split still comes up first in the search bar. It's promoted by all these health and fitness magazines. The reason, ladies and gents, is steroids. So people who use performance enhancing drugs, their bodies are working in a lot different way to that of a natural athlete. So with steroids, there's a few factors that come into play. First of all, protein synthesis lasts a lot longer. So whereas with a natural, the protein synthesis curve sort of lasts 2 to 3 days and then drops. With someone on steroids, it's going to stay elevated for longer before dropping off, which means they don't need to train each muscle group as frequently. Also, someone on steroids has an increased risk of injury because their muscles are growing at such a fast rate. Their bones, ligaments, tendons can't keep up. So training more frequently will just make them more susceptible to injury. So they tend to just train 1 day a week with a typical bro split, but they don't actually give out the information. Obviously they don't claim to be on steroids, most of them, and they don't give out the information that is not as optimal for a natural lifter. So that's about it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned something. If you are doing a bro split program, I would recommend switching to a higher frequency program, and I'm sure you'll see a lot better results from it. If you've got any questions, drop a comment down below or hit me up on social media. I'll leave all the links in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up, get subscribed, there's more content to come. My next video is going to be my upper A session, so stay tuned. Peace out, take it easy, catch you in the next one.